My 7-year-old granddaughter whispered. She put something in my juice, it makes me feel underwater. She said it the way children say things they've been holding for a long time, carefully, quietly, as if the words themselves might break if she said them too loud. Her breath smelled like apple juice and graham crackers. Her eyes were glassy. Her head was too heavy for her small shoulders. I didn't panic. I started counting. I buckled her seatbelt. I closed the door. I walked around the front of my car. And in the 30 seconds it took me to get into the driver's seat, I made a list of 6 people who were about to learn exactly what a grandmother is willing to do to protect the last living piece of her dead daughter-in-law. My name is Alina Reeves. I'm 68 years old. And this is the story of how my son's second wife lost everything because she thought a retired nurse wouldn't recognize the symptoms of diphenhydramine overdose in a child. I live in a small ranch house on Meridian Lane in Brentwood, Tennessee, 10 miles south of downtown Nashville. The house is 1,400 square feet, pale yellow with white shutters, and the front yard has a dogwood tree my late husband Howard planted the week we closed in 1986. It blooms pink every April. Every April for 40 years it has bloomed pink, and every April Howard used to stand on the porch with his coffee and say, "There she goes again, Ellie, right on time." Howard passed in 2019. Pancreatic cancer, 74 years old. He didn't want a funeral, he wanted a brunch. So we had a brunch, and his best friend from the fire department gave the eulogy between a tray of biscuits and a plate of eggs, and I think Howard would have approved. I worked labor and delivery at Vanderbilt University Medical Center for 37 years. Night shift mostly. I caught a lot of other people's babies, and when I retired in 2020, I had a wall in my laundry room covered in birth announcements and crayon thank you notes, and one framed photograph of a woman named Louisa, who I delivered in 1994, and who came back 26 years later as a pediatric oncologist to thank me for letting her cry when her water broke. She said I was the first person in her life who told her it was okay to cry loud. That was the best tip I ever got, louder than money. If you've ever trusted someone with something that mattered, stay with me. My son Daniel Reeves is 36 years old. He's an aerospace engineer at a firm called Linden Systems on the west side of Nashville. He's quiet, he's steady. He builds model airplanes for relaxation the way other men drink beer. I raised him alone from age 14 after his father's first heart scare, because I wanted him to learn early that love is a verb and women carry most of the heavy furniture in any house. He was a gentle child. He grew into a gentle man. Daniel married Myra Watanabe Reeves on September 8, 2017. Myra was a pediatric nurse at Monroe Carroll Children's Hospital. She was 29 when they married. She was small, 52, with short black hair she cut herself in the bathroom mirror and a laugh that came out in 3 syllables. She loved orange marigolds, hated cilantro, and knew the names of 74 bird species by their calls. She called me Mom from the 3rd time we met. Their daughter Violet was born on June 3, 2019. Myra went into labor at 3 a.m., and Daniel drove her to Vanderbilt, and I was waiting in the lobby because I had worked that hospital for 37 years, and I was not going to sit at home while my daughter-in-law did the hardest work of her life. I was in the delivery room. I cut the cord. I cried harder than I had since Howard's diagnosis. Myra was diagnosed with stage III ovarian cancer in September 2023. She fought for 19 months. She died on April 11, 2024. Violet was 4 years old and 10 months old. Daniel was 34. I was 66. The grief in that house had weight. You could feel it when you walked in the door. It was in the curtains, in the refrigerator, in the silence where Myra used to hum while she cooked. Violet asked about her mother every single day for 6 months. Where did Mommy go? Is Mommy in the sky? Can Mommy see me? Daniel answered every question. He didn't skip a single one. He put a framed photo of Myra on Violet's nightstand, and every night before bed he'd say, "Tell Mommy what you did today." Violet would tell the picture about her dinosaur coloring book or her preschool teacher or the caterpillar she found. I used to stand in the hallway and listen and cry into my hand so neither of them would hear. Then, in August 2024, 4 months after the funeral, Daniel joined a widows and widowers support group that met at a Lutheran church in Green Hills. That's where he met Sabrina. Sabrina Dorsey Reeves, now 33, was a grief facilitator at the support group. That's what her business card said. She wasn't a licensed therapist. She had a certificate from a 6-weekend online program in compassionate bereavement coaching. She was 30 at the time, blonde, tall, the kind of woman who used the word journey a lot when she talked about other people's pain. She knew exactly what grieving people needed to hear. She was also recently widowed. She said, her husband Trevor had died, she said, in a motorcycle accident in Colorado 3 years earlier. She showed Daniel a photograph of a handsome, smiling man on a motorcycle. She told him she understood. She told him grief didn't have a timeline. She told him her journey had prepared her to walk with other people through theirs. Daniel fell hard. I want to be fair here. Grief is a particular kind of loneliness, and a man who had just lost the love of his life was not in the best emotional position to evaluate a woman who spoke fluent grief. Sabrina said every right thing. She brought casseroles. She took Violet to the park. She sat on the floor and did puzzles with a 4-year-old for hours. She called me Mom Reeves within 3 weeks of meeting me. I didn't like it. I didn't like that it came that fast. Myra had called me Mom, and Myra had earned it. But Daniel was happy. Daniel was sleeping through the night again for the first time in a year. Daniel was laughing. And I am a woman who watched her son grieve his wife for 19 months, and I was not about to be the mother-in-law who punished him for finding a way to breathe again. So I smiled. I hosted Sabrina at Sunday dinners. I complimented her pot roast, which was dry. I told her she was a blessing, and I hoped that my instincts were wrong. Daniel and Sabrina married on February 14, 2025, Valentine's Day, 10 months after Myra's funeral. It was a small ceremony at the Lutheran church. Violet was the flower girl. Sabrina wore off-white, which I noticed, and Daniel cried when he said his vows, and I sat in the second pew next to my sister Rosemary, and I did not once let my face betray what my gut had been telling me since August. My gut had been telling me, this woman is performing grief the way some women perform love. Watch her. The small signs started after the wedding, not dramatic, erosive. May 2025. I came by unannounced to drop off a casserole. Violet was in her room, door closed, TV on loud. It was 11 a.m. on a Saturday. Sabrina was on the couch in a robe, phone in her hand, and when I asked if Violet wanted to help me bake cookies, Sabrina said, she's still sleeping. She sleeps a lot now. Growth spurt. Violet was 5 years old. 5-year-olds don't sleep until 11 a.m. on Saturdays. They are biological alarm clocks. Myra used to joke that Violet could wake a corpse. I noticed it. I said nothing. July 2025. Daniel traveled to Seattle for a week for a work conference. Sabrina called me on Tuesday morning asking if I could take Violet for a few days just to get some rest. Not because she asked for grandma, because Sabrina was tired. I took Violet. And for 6 days that child slept like a normal child, 8 to 10 hours a night, up at 6:45 a.m., full of questions, asking for pancakes, asking about her mother's marigolds in my back garden. She was a different child in my house. When I drove her home Sunday evening, she cried in the car. Not loud crying, the quiet kind. I asked what was wrong. She said, I don't want to go back to the juice, Grandma. I thought she meant she didn't like juice. I said, you don't have to drink juice if you don't like it, baby. She nodded and wiped her nose, and we kept driving. I remembered it wrong. I filed it as a picky eater. I am a retired labor and delivery nurse. I should have known better. But I had stopped being a nurse to a child who wasn't mine in that moment. I had started being a grandmother who didn't want to see what she was seeing. That is its own kind of blindness. It is the blindness of love that thinks the best of people because it can't bear to think the worst. I didn't make that mistake again. September 2025. Violet's first-grade teacher, Mrs. Nakagawa, called Daniel at work. Violet had fallen asleep at her desk 3 times that week. Sabrina had told the school Violet had sleep issues and was on new medication. Violet was not on any medication. I know because Daniel showed me her medical chart 2 months later when he was looking for her pediatrician's number. Clean chart, no prescriptions. Sabrina had told the school she was medicated. That was the moment my instincts stopped whispering and started speaking in complete sentences. Wednesday, October 15th, 2025. 2:47 p.m. Daniel was in Huntsville on a 3-day work trip. I drove to the house, a 2-story Craftsman on Blair Boulevard in West Nashville, with a bag of groceries and a plan to make Violet chicken and dumplings for dinner. Sabrina had told me 2 days earlier that Violet hadn't been eating well, and I told myself I would cook the one meal I knew that child would always eat. Myra used to make it. Violet called it Mommy's soup. I had the same recipe. I rang the bell. Sabrina opened the door. She was in leggings and a sports bra, sweat on her forehead, earbuds in. She pulled one out. "Oh, Eleanor, I didn't know you were coming. I texted you 2 hours ago. Must have missed it, I was doing Pilates." She didn't invite me in. She stood in the doorway blocking it. Behind her, I could see the living room, toys scattered, a glass on the coffee table half full of apple juice, a children's Benadryl box on the side table, half hidden under a throw pillow. "Where's Violet?" "Napping." "It's 2:47 in the afternoon." "She's been tired, Eleanor." "Kids get tired." I handed her the Tupperware. She took it. She did not move from the doorway. "Can I say hi to Violet?" A tiny pause, measured. "She's really out, Eleanor. Let her sleep." "I'll just peek in," I said. I stepped forward. She didn't move fast enough to stop me, which I don't think she was expecting herself to have to do. I walked through the living room, past the apple juice on the coffee table, past the Benadryl box under the throw pillow, up the stairs to Violet's room. Violet's door was closed. I opened it. She was on the bed, fully dressed in the clothes she'd worn to school: pink sweatshirt, jeans, one sock on, one sock off on the floor like she'd started pulling it off and given up halfway. Backpack on the rug beside the bed. Lunchbox next to the backpack. She hadn't even made it through putting her things away before she'd fallen onto the mattress. She was not napping. She was out. Her breathing was shallow but steady. I crossed the room in 4 steps and put my hand on her forehead. No fever. Took her pulse at the wrist, 62 beats per minute, which is low for a 7-year-old at rest. Watched her chest rise and fall. Counted. 14 breaths per minute. Also low. I knew exactly what I was looking at. She was drugging my granddaughter. I picked up my granddaughter. She didn't wake up. Her head rolled against my shoulder. Her small arm hung limp down my back. I carried her downstairs. Sabrina was in the living room now, earbuds in both ears again, pretending to stretch. She saw me. "Eleanor, what are you?" "I'm taking her." "She's tired." "She's fine." "I'm taking her." "Eleanor." I turned and looked at her. I am 54. I am 68 years old. I weigh 138 pounds. Sabrina is 5 inches taller and 15 years younger than me. None of that mattered in that moment. I looked at her over the top of my granddaughter's head, and I said, very quietly, "If you try to stop me, I will call every nurse I know at Vanderbilt to this house inside of 20 minutes. And the first thing they will do is take a urine sample from this child. Do you want that today, Sabrina? Or do you want to step back?" She stepped back. I buckled Violet into my passenger seat. That's when she whispered it. "Grandma, please tell Daddy's new wife to stop putting things in my juice. It makes me feel like I'm underwater." That was the moment everything became real. I didn't drive to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was 22 minutes away, and I needed 12 hours. I needed 12 hours to do this the right way, not the emotional way. I drove to a pediatric urgent care on White Bridge Road, Green Hills Pediatric Partners. Doctor. Lysette Acaffer had been Violet's pediatrician since she was born. Lysette was a friend. Lysette was also the kind of doctor who did not tolerate the rounding up of inconvenient facts. I walked Violet into the clinic at 3:08 p.m. I said one sentence to the receptionist. "I'm Eleanor Reeves. I'm a retired labor and delivery nurse at Vanderbilt, and I have reason to believe my granddaughter has been repeatedly given diphenhydramine in her juice. I need Dr. Acaffer and I need a full tox panel." The receptionist did not ask me to repeat myself. She picked up the phone. Violet was in an exam room in 4 minutes. Lysette walked in, closed the door, looked at me, looked at Violet, and said, "Tell me everything." I did, the 11 a.m. Saturday sleeping. The new medication Sabrina had told the school about. The Benadryl box under the throw pillow. The half-full sippy cup of apple juice on the coffee table. The whisper in my car 14 minutes ago. The pulse and respiration numbers I'd taken in Violet's bedroom. Lysette didn't interrupt. She took notes. When I was done, she said, "Eleanor, I'm running a full urine toxicology, a serum panel, and a CBC. I'm also going to photograph her vitals at intervals. You did the right thing bringing her here. I want you to sit in the waiting room with a cup of water. I'll come get you when I have results." Lysette. Yes. I need 12 hours before you call CPS. She looked at me. Her face was a doctor's face, measured, professional, weighing a decision she had training to make. Then, slowly, it became a mother's face. "Eleanor, I can give you 4. I cannot give you 12. If this panel comes back positive for therapeutic range diphenhydramine in a child this size, I am legally required to report within a reasonable window. 4 hours lets me document that I'm still gathering information. 12 is obstruction. 4 is enough. Use them. Before I tell you what those 4 hours built, just answer this. If this was your granddaughter, what would you do? Drop it in the comments. I read every one. 3:47 p.m. Results came back. Violet's serum diphenhydramine level was 84 nanograms per milliliter, twice the therapeutic dose for her weight, consistent with a recent administration of approximately 75 milligrams within the last 4 hours. The urine panel showed metabolites consistent with repeated dosing over a period of at least 60 days. 60 days. Sabrina had been drugging my granddaughter for at least 2 months. Lysette handed me the printout. She said, "I'm starting the clock, Eleanor." 3:47 p.m. 4 hours. I called Daniel first. Not second, first. Daniel was in a meeting in Huntsville. He walked out. I told him in exactly 4 sentences. 1. Violet is safe. She is with me at Lysette Ackhaffer's office. She is stable. 2. Lysette has run a toxicology panel. It shows Sabrina has been giving Violet children's Benadryl in her juice for at least 60 days. 3. I need you to get on the next flight home. I need you to say nothing to Sabrina. I need you to come directly to my house on Meridian Lane. 4. Daniel, I am not speculating. I am reading a lab report. This is real. There was silence on the phone for a long time. I counted. 17 seconds. Then my son said, in a voice I had not heard since the week Myra died, "Mom, I'm on my way." He hung up. I sat in Lysette's waiting room with my hand on Violet's back. She was sleeping in the chair next to me, still dressed in her pink sweatshirt, and I made the next 5 calls in the order I had planned while driving. Call 2, Ruth Tanaka. Family law attorney, Nashville, specialty in child welfare cases involving medical evidence. She answered on the second ring. I told her everything in 6 minutes. She said, "Eleanor, drive to my office. I will be there in 40 minutes. Bring the child. Bring the lab report." Call 3, Dana Velasquez, licensed private investigator, Nashville, specializing in family cases. Dana answered on the third ring. I told her in 3 sentences what I needed. Full background check on Sabrina Dorsey Reeves, including any previous marriage, the death of one Trevor Dorsey in Colorado, and full Amazon and pharmacy purchasing history associated with her email and credit cards. Dana said, "I'll have preliminary in 18 hours, deep in 72. Call 4, Vanderbilt Child Advocacy Center. I called as a retired L&D nurse with a license number and a 37-year employee ID. I spoke to a social worker named Imani Breckenridge. I told her I was preparing to file a formal report within the hour and I wanted to know what documentation she required. She told me. I took notes. Call 5, my son's boss at Linden Systems, Marcus Okonkwo. I reminded him who I was. I told him Daniel had a family emergency and would be flying back from Huntsville that afternoon. He said, "Mrs. Reeves, whatever you need. Daniel is one of mine." Call 6, Vanderbilt Children's Pediatric Inpatient Unit. Head nurse Chiamaka Ez. I had trained her in 2008. I asked if she could reserve an observation bed for a tox-exposed 7-year-old arriving within 2 hours. She said yes before I finished asking. By 7:47 p.m. I had medical documentation, a lawyer meeting, a private investigator on retainer, a hospital bed secured, my son on a plane, and a CPS clock that was up. Lysette filed the report at 7:48 p.m. Daniel landed at BNA at 8:14 p.m. I picked him up at the curb in front of Southwest Baggage Claim. He got in the passenger seat of my Buick, and he did not speak for 6 minutes. Violet was asleep in the back. Lysette had cleared her to go home with me overnight, with observation, before her morning intake at Vanderbilt Children's. At minute 7, Daniel said, "Mom, how long?" 60 days minimum, probably longer. Was she going to? Was there a dose that? No, she was dosing to sedate, not to harm. She was using therapeutic ranges to make a child easier to manage. But a 7-year-old at 48 pounds metabolizes diphenhydramine on an adult curve. Repeated dosing at that level does real harm. Liver, cognition, cardiac rhythm. Lysette will run a full workup tomorrow. He put his face in his hands. He did not cry. I am grateful for that, because if my son had cried in my passenger seat in that moment, I would have lost the grip I had on my own composure, and I needed that grip for another 18 hours. We drove to my house on Meridian Lane. I made grilled cheese and tomato soup. Violet woke up enough to eat half a sandwich. She asked where Daddy was. Daniel picked her up out of her chair and carried her to the couch and held her against his chest for 30 minutes without saying a word. At 10:14 p.m., Violet asleep on the couch, Daniel in the armchair across from me, I opened Ruth Tanaka's envelope. Inside were 3 documents, already drafted, couriered to my house by Ruth's paralegal at 9:30 p.m. Emergency ex parte motion for temporary custody of Violet Reeves to Daniel Reeves. Sole physical and legal custody, pending full hearing. Order of protection against Sabrina Dorsey Reeves, barring her from contact with the child and from the residence on Blair Boulevard. Petition for divorce, drafted in Daniel's name, citing endangerment of a minor. Daniel read them. He signed them. We drove back to the Blair Boulevard house at 11:02 p.m. Sabrina was on the couch watching a true crime documentary, wine glass in hand. She stood up when we walked in. "Oh, thank God, where is Violet? I've been worried sick. I was about to call." Daniel held up one hand. "Sabrina, we know about the Benadryl." Sabrina's face did something I will remember for the rest of my life. It did 4 things in sequence, inside of about 2 seconds. First, confusion, a practiced confusion, the kind you rehearse. Then recognition. Then calculation. Then a performance of offense. "What?" The tox panel came back at 3:47 p.m. this afternoon. 84 nanograms per milliliter. Metabolites consistent with 60 days of dosing. A CPS report was filed at 7:48 p.m. You're going to receive a knock on this door tomorrow morning, and an officer is going to serve you with these. He handed her the papers. Ex parte custody order, protection order, divorce petition. You have 30 minutes to pack a bag. Your mother's house, a hotel, I don't care. But you will not spend tonight in this house. Daniel, baby, this is insane. I would never. Sabrina, he looked at her. Violet whispered it to my mother in the car today, word for word. Tell Daddy's new wife to stop putting things in my juice. Whatever you're about to say to me is the last thing you will ever say in this house. Choose it carefully. She chose wrong, she said. That child has always been a liar. That is Myra's daughter through and through. I watched my son's face change. I watched the last piece of loyalty he had for this woman leave his body the way air leaves a tire with a nail in it. Slow, complete, final, pack a bag, he said. Now. She packed, she left. The front door closed behind her at 11:41 p.m. Dana Velasquez called me Friday morning, 36 hours after I'd hired her. She said, "Eleanor, I need to come to your house. I don't want to send this by email." She showed up at 10 a.m. with a laptop and a folder. Sabrina Dorsey Reeves had been married before. His name was Trevor Dorsey. He did not die in a motorcycle accident in Colorado. He was alive, 46 years old, living in Scottsdale, Arizona, remarried with 2 children. Sabrina had divorced him in 2020 after a contested custody case involving their son, Theo, then 3. The court records, which Dana pulled from Maricopa County, showed that Theo had been hospitalized twice during the marriage for unexplained sedation events. A CPS case had been opened. The case had been closed as inconclusive because Sabrina had moved to Nashville before the investigation completed. She had done this before, to her own child. She had been investigated. The investigation had been abandoned when she fled the state. Dana also had Sabrina's purchase history. 18 bottles of children's Benadryl purchased from Amazon between July 14, 2025 and October 10, 2025. Every purchase on Sabrina's personal Amazon account. Every delivery to the Blair Boulevard address. Plus 4 bulk orders from a Walgreens pharmacy app, same date range. She also had photographs. Sabrina entering a man's apartment in West Nashville, a man named Craig Holloway, a real estate investor, on 7 separate occasions during hours when Violet was at school and Daniel was at work. The photographs were time-stamped. They were clean. Dana laid it all on my kitchen table. Daniel was there. He sat very still and he read every page and he did not say a word. Then he said, "Mom, I need Ruth's number, now." Ruth Tanaka was at my house within an hour. Daniel briefed her on Dana's findings. Ruth made 3 phone calls, one to the Nashville CPS caseworker, one to a detective at Metro Nashville Police Department's Special Victims Unit, and one to a prosecutor at the Davidson County DA's office. The landscape of Sabrina's situation changed in the course of those 3 phone calls. She was no longer a woman facing a divorce and a protection order. She was a woman facing a criminal investigation into repeated child endangerment, with prior history in another state, and with documented evidence of at least 60 days of intentional sedation of a minor. She was arrested Monday morning, October 20th, 2025, at her mother's house in Franklin, Tennessee. The Davidson County DA charged her with aggravated child abuse and child endangerment. The Maricopa County case was reopened. Theo Dorsey, now 8, was placed in protective custody pending investigation. Sabrina's mother posted bail on Wednesday. By Friday, Sabrina had tried to call me 4 times from a blocked number. I answered the 5th time. She said, "Alina, this is all a misunderstanding. You have to tell Daniel." I said, "Sabrina, listen to me carefully. I spent 37 years catching other people's babies. I have held more dying children than you have ever met. I know what the inside of a pediatric ICU sounds like at 3 a.m. when a mother finds out her child is never going to wake up. I know what diphenhydramine toxicity looks like in a 7-year-old who weighs 48 pounds. I know what I saw in Violet's bedroom. I know what the lab said. And I know what you said about Myra's daughter. I am never going to speak to you again. If you call this number one more time, I will add it to your charges. Do you understand?" She said, "Alina, please." I hung up. She has not called back. The divorce was finalized in March 2026. Daniel was granted sole physical and legal custody of Violet. Sabrina was granted supervised visitation, 4 hours a month at a court-approved facility, pending the outcome of her criminal trial. She has not used her visitation hours once. Her criminal trial is scheduled for June 2026. Ruth tells me the DA is seeking 7 to 12 years. With the Maricopa priors now formally attached, the DA may expand the charges. Craig Holloway, the real estate investor Sabrina had been seeing, it turned out he was also married. His wife found out when Dana's photographs ended up in an unrelated Nashville newspaper column about infidelity in the Nashville real estate scene. Sabrina's grief journey had never included grief. It had included a lover and a desire to be rid of her husband's child. It's April 2026 now. Violet is 7 years old. She turned 7 last June, not long after her mother's death anniversary, and she's in the 2nd grade at an elementary school 5 blocks from my house. She lives with me 3 days a week and with her father 4 days a week. Daniel sold the house on Blair Boulevard. He bought a smaller one on my street, 2 blocks down from me, so Violet can walk to Grandma's house by herself when she feels like it. She walks to my house almost every afternoon. She sleeps from 8:30 p.m. to 6:45 a.m. She eats 3 meals a day. She laughs loud. She asks about her mother every week and we answer every question. She is a biological alarm clock again. Myra would have loved this. Dr. Ackhaffer ran a full follow-up panel in December. Violet's liver enzymes are normal. Her cardiac rhythm is normal. Her cognition is normal. Lysette said, "Eleanor, she is going to be fine. You caught it in time. 6 more months at those levels and we'd be having a different conversation." 6 more months. I still have Myra's marigolds in my back garden. Violet waters them. She knows they were her mother's favorite. Last spring, the first time she helped me plant them, she looked up at me and said, "Grandma, do you think Mommy can see me planting her flowers?" I said, "Baby, I think your mommy sees everything." She said, "Even the bad parts." I said, "Especially the bad parts." Because she's the one who made sure the bad parts didn't get to stay. Violet thought about that for a long time. She said, "Did Mommy tell you about the juice, Grandma?" And I sat down on my back porch, next to a 7-year-old child who had just asked me one of the hardest questions I had ever been asked, and I said, "Baby, I think your mother whispered to me every single day." I just didn't know I was hearing her until the day you whispered it out loud. Violet nodded, the way children nod when something lands in the exact right place. "Grandma." "Yes, baby. I think Mommy is glad you're my grandma." I did not cry, not in front of her. I said, "I know she is, Violet, I know she is." We went inside. We made chicken and dumplings. The Watanabe family recipe Myra had written down for me in 2017 on a 3x5 index card in her small, careful handwriting, which I keep in my recipe box between the chili and the cornbread. Violet stirred the pot. She told me about her friend Priya at school who was learning to do a cartwheel. She ate 2 bowls. She slept in my guest room that night, the same guest room where Myra had slept the week before her wedding. The same guest room where I had once sat up all night with a flu-sick Violet at age 3 while Myra did chemotherapy. The same guest room where I sometimes sit now, alone, and talk to Myra in my head the way I used to talk to Howard. I tell Myra everything. I told her about the juice. I told her about the whisper. I told her about the lab report and the arrest and the custody order. I told her Daniel was sleeping again. I told her Violet was laughing again. I told her the marigolds were blooming again. She never answers, but I never stop hearing her. Some mothers are still in the room even after they leave it. Some daughters-in-law become daughters. Some granddaughters become the whole reason a 68-year-old woman in a pale yellow house on Meridian Lane decides, on a Wednesday afternoon, that she is going to outwork, outthink, and outlast anyone who tries to hurt her child. Women who were raised to be polite have a way of forgetting politeness the moment their children are in danger. We don't scream, we don't swing, we make phone calls, we read lab reports, we know the nurses at the front desk. We have the pediatrician's cell number. We keep the recipe cards. We water the marigolds. And when our granddaughters whisper something into our ears in the passenger seat of our Buicks, we listen. And we believe them the first time, because 7-year-olds don't lie about the juice. They lie about brushing their teeth. They lie about eating their broccoli. They do not lie about being underwater. If a child tells you she feels underwater, she is drowning. And the only question worth asking is how fast you can get to her. I got there in time. I want that on record. In a world full of stories where the warning came too late, I got there in time. Myra Watanabe Reeves raised a daughter who was brave enough to whisper the truth to the only person she trusted to do something about it. I was that person. I will be that person for as long as I am breathing. And when I am not, when this ranch house on Meridian Lane sits quiet and the dogwood blooms pink without me on the porch to notice, Violet will know exactly what to do, because she was raised by 3 women. One of them in the ground, one of them in the kitchen. One of them still walking to Grandma's house every afternoon, the way she has walked for a year now, past the marigolds, up the steps, through the door that is never, ever locked. She thought it was just juice. I knew it was evidence. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and join our community for more true life stories. We'll see you in the next one.